In a month where Canadians take pride in what they have accomplished on the world stage, Classic 107's Album of the Month for November celebrates the incredible composers that make up our cultural tapestry. Montreal's Ensemble ArtChoral has shared the latest collection of works in their series celebrating Canadian composers. Volume 9, Canada, 13 works by Canadian women composers, is a compendium of choral compositions that span the country from Vancouver's Alice Ping-Yi Ho to PEI-born Amy Brandon to Winnipeg's own Karen Sunabaka. The Ensemble ArtChoral is led by the celebrated conductor Matthias Maute, who joins us this morning from Cape Town, South Africa, to tell us more about this project. Good morning, or I should even say good afternoon to you, Matthias.
In my case, yes. Thanks for having me.
So where did the idea for this record, this collection of pieces by women composers first come from?
Since the entire series of 15 albums, ArtChoral, that tries to feature the history of a cappella singing from the 1600s, 1500s, all the way to the 21st century, it became clear that there should be a showcase for Canadian composers. And since in history, women have had really difficult times, their talent was underrated for centuries, it's about time to do something about it and to find a way to show what is the Canadian landscape, how does it look like these days, looking through the lenses or the eyes of very fantastically talented female composers, women composers here in Canada. And that's in itself is really an exciting idea. And what is interesting about it that so all these invitations went out to compose, and it was made clear from the beginning there was like no restriction or no particular subject was imposed to the composers. All these women composers came up with their own ideas, their own text, their own choice, and by doing so, delivered something that really spans the country. Like all these different points of views put together show what is the creative state of thinking about a cappella singing in Canada. And it's so interesting that the subjects that are dealt with are going from politically inspired themes to more like emotional human subjects, and trying to go with reality these days. At times also we have two indigenous composers that clearly imply that an understanding for their culture should be created by their works. So it really has components that are musical, but that go beyond the pure musicality of those scores and the entire album.
There's so much to break down in what you just said, but you mentioned the wide range of pieces and musical languages that you received, especially since the ensemble didn't put any sort of restrictions per se on the composers when it came to these portrayals. What is the challenge for the Ensemble ArtChoral to actually put together a record like this, given the wide range of compositions that you received?
Obviously, for singers and also for me as a conductor, it's a challenge to stray away from like the beaten tracks and to go down 13 individual pieces that all are like only connected by the idea to do something jointly and create sort of a patchwork. But as a composer, everybody tries to come up with individual, highly unique ideas involving different techniques, different languages, different styles. Singers have to be very adaptable to what's going on. So we all tried our very best to honor those fabulous pieces that were sent to us. But in general, I would say it's a good way to increase the horizon of everyone, both for the singers, the musicians involved, myself included, but also for the composers to see what their colleagues do. And an album is like a platform, a shared platform for everyone. So for the public to listen to, for the composers to see how their works do among other works, and it has become like a library where you can go to a bookshelf and you pull out one particular piece that you like in particular and so on. And every day I choose another one.
As you are putting these pieces together, or as you're even receiving these pieces from these composers, as you're beginning the process of putting together this record, What are some things that maybe surprised you about the compositions as you were pulling those books off the shelf for the first time? What were the things that were making you go, "Oh, that's interesting"?
Well, first of all, in looking from afar to all 13 pieces combined, it's the contrast between those different pieces that clearly feature the different backgrounds of composers and feature a diversity, a cultural diversity in our country that I think the art should be able to reflect. And I'm very happy to see that this was like a part of our mission that was very nicely accomplished.
Mm.
A part of that, I would say, like some pieces had clearly a highly virtuosic standard in mind when fast rhythms were combined with meter changes and chords that were very complex. Other pieces were way more like tonal and based on melodic thinking that is closer to but easier to adapt to as a singer. And some pieces actually go in a totally different direction because there's like text that is spoken on patterns of music that are sung that sort of go straight further away from the traditional canon of classical music.
So you mentioned the wide range of cultures that are reflected on this record. This album features a lot of pieces that not only speak to different cultures, but also the issues that face different cultures within Canada writ large. That includes issues surrounding racialized violence or any number of other things that people from these communities are looking at and feeling on a daily basis. What does it mean to perform and record music that has so much weight to it, so much extra meaning and purpose behind it?
Personally, as a musician, I'm actually grateful to see that there are ideas that go beyond the purely aesthetic thinking. It's sort of easy as a musician to always hide behind the beauty of the music and never be forced to take a stand to what's going on in the world. And contemporary music has no choice but to reply to what's going on right now, as opposed to dealing with composers that unfortunately have passed away a long time ago. So that contemporary stand of looking at our reality today and how we react to that reality, music is an important contribution in that exploration of that reality. So for me, it was sort of not a surprise that, and I was very happy to see that composers would choose that lane, because in modern a cappella writing, there's a lot of spiritual, semi-spiritual stuff going on that doesn't seem to be always authentic or sincere. It has more become a cliche very often. And I was really happy to see that these very talented, excellent women composers sort of took it head on and looked around, and this is what I want to do. This is my life, my reality, and there's a choir. What can we do in that situation that reflects upon us as society, me as a composer, and them as a choir? So that was a very interesting situation, and I'm very happy how the composers dealt with that.
As you work with these compositions and all of the social issues that they contain, I'm wondering, what does the Ensemble ArtChoral take away from performing these kinds of works into the rest of their performance output over the course of an artistic season, which oftentimes features composers whose music has survived over centuries?
Yeah, well, we performed the piece at Maison Symphonique in Montreal to a large audience, and very successfully so. I was pleased to discover that Canadian audience really appreciates Canadian content, and should
Yeah.
be very encouraging to many more organizations to try projects like this. And I think for me to be able to point to this enormous and substantial and high quality collection of pieces as Canadian content, it really is something that I like. When if someone mentions you're Canadian, well, I would say that's what I understand as being Canadian. To see that
Mhm.
there is these incredible composers around, they come up with wonderful ideas, and to being able to identify with it. And I felt among the choir, the singers, there was sort of that common sense of this is us more than when we do pieces from the past that are very beautiful, and we love them and we do our best. But there's sort of a nuance that you cannot find in music that comes necessarily from far away. So, and to reach that level with contemporary music, that is not easy to obtain. And so, again, I have to congratulate those fabulous composers, what they delivered and what made it possible for us to include them in concerts that usually thrive more on traditional classical content rather than contemporary music.
This record also has a lot of indigenous themes on it with composers like Beverly McIver and Karen Sunabaka, who has Métis ties as well, contributing pieces, as you mentioned. Indigenous collaborations in choral music here in Canada are becoming more and more commonplace. I'm wondering what you've noticed about that over the course of your work, working with different choirs in Montreal and beyond, and what it has done to decolonize the classical music space.
Well, that's a very heavy question. Well, the album starts with Sandy Schofield's Woman, a beautiful piece that has become sort of the hymn of the choir. It's a really poignant piece that brings it brings out what the role of a woman in a traditionally indigenous society, and it's totally like based on harmonies that we all recognize as Western music, so to speak. But the fact that they can go together and grow together, that was for me the most outstanding aspect, because we as non-indigenous people, we cannot we are not inside the indigenous culture, so we can only try to create bridges. So we can move a step in that direction, but we need people who can move into our direction. And it was very touching for me to see that all the three, Sandy Scofield, the three indigenous composers, were very happy and willing to do so and meet us halfway through. And as a result, there was a real cultural exchange, and a new reality was born. And for me, would be like the dream and the ideal of a Canada where everyone gets together, there's a meeting point that we can all agree on. And the arts are such a wonderful meeting point for everyone. And so that's why it's so important to create those places and where both sides can get together and move one step towards the other one.
The other ways in which classical music is becoming a more inclusive space is, of course, in providing more gender equity in that space. And very clearly, this record is an effort to continue that work and include more voices of female composers in the classical music space. What does making this record change for the Ensemble ArtChoral when it comes to programming, concerts, and performance? In other words, what does interacting with the works of these female composers enable you to maybe do when it comes to making new concerts, new opportunities for audiences to engage with your artistry?
Right. Well, I mean, as I mentioned, the pieces have been performed, and it was great to see that there's potential. They can actually reach out quite far to a large audience, not just to a very specialized audience, which is since we are self-producing our concert series, this is a very important aspect because ultimately you have to have enough people that come to a concert to warrant all the effort and the input of resources and so on. So that was for me like to realize that with contemporary music, it's possible to be in touch with a large audience, not just a specialized crowd. And that's, of course, very encouraging. And in general, it fits well into the overall picture that in a cappella tradition, you can actually quite easily jump from one genre to another genre within one concert. And so with that kind of attitude, it's possible to, it's not necessary to do all 13 pieces in one slot. So we had a couple of concerts lined up where we included always some of those pieces. And that worked very nicely. And I mean, since ArtChoral, the project for the Atma label has like 15 albums, there's a lot of material that has been generated throughout the years. The project was born during the pandemic when the only thing that could be done for singers, for choristers, was to record. Concerts were all were all prohibited. So that was the beginning of the project, and we have so much material that we can never fit everything into a program, or in the programs that we do.
Yeah.
But we have so much material, and it's great to see that this fits so seamlessly into the entire series. It goes from the Renaissance all the way up to the 21st century. And here is ArtChoral Canada.
You are currently in South Africa working with a number of different ensembles on Baroque repertoire. What do you take away from this project, from working with these 13 Canadian female composers into your work, not just with Baroque ensembles in South Africa, but with so many other ensembles all over the world?
This is such an interesting question. I think, in general, what it does when you are involved with a project like ArtChoral Canada, you get all this new music, and you have to discover it. You have to make it your own. And it's what I took away from the CD was from the recording that you always have to have open eyes and open ears and open minds to what other people do, and see the many different colors that is created through this patchwork of reality we live in. And I have to say, it's a very privileged position to be able to honor by your own work, to try to honor these incredible composers of like the Canadian women composers, but also like composers from the past, by what we do as a musician today. And that feeling really goes across all the work I do, regardless which period of musical history I'm dealing with. And I have to say, the Canadian album was a clear indicator that this is the way to go, and just to stay open-minded and try new stuff and see what other people contribute to, how they shape our perception of our reality.
You can learn more about this incredible record, the 9th volume in the Ensemble ArtChoral's series, Canada, 13 works by Canadian women composers, at our website today, classic107.com, and on the Classic 107 app. Matthias Maute, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Classic 107 to tell us more about this record, and congratulations on its release.
Thank you so much for having me.